Looking poor on purpose is one of the most reliable ways to become rich in America, and almost everyone is trained from childhood to do the exact opposite. Today, I'll show you the actual mechanics of that strategy, the psychology research on why it works, and, at the halfway mark, the three-part framework for doing it deliberately instead of by accident. This isn't a video about being cheap. It's about where the signal in your spending goes and who's actually reading it. My name is William. Here's the study that should unsettle you. In the largest survey of American millionaires ever conducted, 79% inherited nothing, a third never earned six figures in a single working year, and the most common cars in their driveways were unremarkable used sedans, not the vehicles their income could easily justify. Meanwhile, the person leasing the luxury SUV on a $70,000 salary is, by the numbers, more likely to be fragile than wealthy. Both of these people are sending a signal. Only one of them is sending it on purpose. Before the mechanics, the part that isn't your fault, you were taught the opposite lesson before you could talk. Every ad, every movie, every you've earned it moment in culture insists that money should be visible, that a raise deserves an upgrade, that looking successful and being successful are the same project. Nobody handed you the counter-training. This video is the counter-training. Here's who profits from you believing display and wealth are the same thing. A new car payment now averages around $770 a month on loans stretching close to 6 years, financing an asset that loses value every single day you own it. A 1% financial advisor fee sounds harmless until you run it 30 years and watch it eat a quarter of your final portfolio. The entire apparatus of visible spending, leasing, financing, status retail, profits precisely when you can't tell the difference between a purchase and a signal. Complexity and display are cousins. Both bill you for feeling important. Darius leases a car 2 tiers above what his logistics coordinator's salary comfortably supports, wears the watch, and has almost nothing invested after 9 years of steady raises. His money is visible, and his balance is not. 3 desks over, Priya drives a paid-off Corolla with a dent she stopped noticing, and quietly crossed $400,000 in retirement accounts this spring on the same career, same income bracket. One of them spent 9 years buying a costume. The other spent 9 years buying a decade off the end of her working life. Here's the psychology underneath both of them, because it isn't willpower. It's a documented mechanism with a name, conspicuous consumption, first described by economist Thorstein Veblen in 1899, where an item's price becomes part of its appeal, not despite being expensive, but because of it. Modern behavioral research has a second layer, social comparison theory, which shows people calibrate their own spending against the visible spending of those around them, not their actual finances, their neighbor's display. Combine the two and you get an arms race with no finish line, because the moment you can afford the visible upgrade, someone slightly ahead of you can afford a bigger one. Priya isn't immune to this instinct. She just stopped feeding it with money that had somewhere better to be. That's the whole reveal, and here's the framework built from it. 3 parts. Part 1. Separate the signal from the asset. Before any purchase past a basic threshold, ask what it's actually buying, function or an audience's impression of you. A car gets you to work either way. The model year is signal. A phone works either way past 3 years old. The newest one is signal. This isn't a ban on nice things. It's a question, asked honestly, every time. Part 2. Spend loudly only where the audience is real and paying. Some visible spending genuinely returns money. Client-facing sales roles where appearance affects trust. Industries where a credential-adjacent watch opens doors.
The framework doesn't forbid signaling, it demands the signal have a paying audience, not a parking lot of strangers who forget you by Tuesday. Part 3. Redirect the freed signal money into what Veblen Plids can't buy, time. Every dollar not spent proving something gets automatically routed into retirement accounts and index funds, where it compounds completely invisibly and buys the only status that never needs defending, the ability to leave a job, absorb a bad year, or retire on your own schedule. One honest interruption here. If you want more of the research behind ordinary financial decisions, subscribing is how you vote for it. And today's comment, name one thing you've bought purely for the audience, not the function. I read every one, and last week's list was more honest than most financial advice gets. Now the objections. Isn't this just telling me to be cheap? No, Priya's not depriving herself, she's redirecting. The framework has no opinion on spending money on things you choose fresh with full information for yourself. It has a very strong opinion on spending money to manage strangers' impressions. What about the real advantages of looking successful? Interviews, sales, dating. Genuinely real, which is exactly why Part 2 exists. The line isn't never signal, it's audit your audience. A courtroom lawyer's suit is capital. A stranger's glance in traffic is not. My culture and my family expect visible success, the heaviest objection, and it deserves respect, not a formula. The framework doesn't ask you to disappoint people who matter to you. It asks you to notice which spending is chosen and which is inherited, and to at least make the choice on purpose once. If you recognized your own closet or driveway somewhere in the last few minutes, that recognition cost you nothing tonight, and it's the same one Priya had 9 years ago. Run the math conservatively at 7%. The gap between Darius and Priya's spending, call it $600 a month, invested instead of leased, crosses $100,000 in about 10 years and keeps compounding whether either of them notices or not. Same raises, same decade. One of them bought a decade of freedom, the other bought 9 years of being noticed by people who've already forgotten. 3 moves tonight. Audit one visible purchase using Part 1's question honestly. Identify your real paying audience, if you have one, and stop performing for everyone else. And build the redirect. An automatic transfer the same week so the freed money never has the chance to become the next costume. What to actually invest that redirect in, the account order, the fund, the machinery underneath tonight's numbers, is on this channel, whenever you're ready. Let's go deeper on the mechanism, though, because spend less on show is advice you've heard 100 times and ignored 100 times, and I think that's because nobody hands you a way to actually measure it. So here's one, your signal ratio. Take everything you spent last month in 4 categories: vehicle, clothing and accessories, dining out, and home upgrades, and split each purchase into 2 piles. Pile 1, things you'd have bought at the identical price with nobody ever finding out. Pile 2, things that lose most of their appeal the moment nobody sees them. Add up Pile 2, divide by your total spending in those 4 categories, and you have a number between 0 and 1. Most people who run this exercise honestly land somewhere between 30 and 50%. Priya's number, when she finally ran it 3 years into her Corolla years, was 6%. Not 0, she likes a nice haircut, and she's honest that some of that is for other people, just 6.
The reason this number matters more than any single purchase is that it compounds the same way money does, except backwards. A high signal ratio doesn't just cost you the dollars, it costs you the raise, too. Here's the mechanism economists call hedonic adaptation, married to the signal problem. Any visible upgrade resets your baseline within roughly 6 to 8 weeks. The new car stops feeling new. The nicer watch stops drawing glances once your own eye adjusts to it. So a person with a 40% signal ratio isn't buying 40% extra happiness. They're buying a few weeks of novelty per purchase on a permanent monthly bill forever. Darius has re-signaled at least 4 times in 9 years. A car, then a nicer car, then the watch, then a country club he attends twice a year. Each reset felt like a rival. Each one was a rented high with a real invoice. Compare that to what happens on the other side of the ledger, because invisible spending has its own compounding, and it runs in the opposite direction, rising, not resetting. Every dollar Priya routes into her 401k doesn't need to impress anyone twice. It just sits there, growing, and the growth itself becomes bigger next year without her lifting a finger. There's no hedonic adaptation to a retirement account because you're not supposed to feel it monthly. You're supposed to forget it exists until the day it changes what you're allowed to do with your life. That's the actual trade being made here, stated as plainly as I can put it. Visible spending buys a feeling that expires in weeks and rebuilds you for the next one. Invisible investing buys a number that never resets and never asks to be refreshed. Now, a real instrument you can use this week to act on all of this, because a signal ratio without a redirect is just a guilt trip. Once you've found your number, here's where the freed money goes, concretely. If your employer offers a 401k match and you're not capturing the full match, that's stop number 1, full stop, before anything else, because it's a guaranteed return no signal purchase on earth can match. After that, a Roth IRA, $7,500 a year in 2026, is where the redirected signal money should land next for most earners under the income limits, because the entire point of this money is that it grows and comes out completely untaxed decades from now, the quietest possible form of wealth. If you're self-employed or your company has no plan, a solo 401k or a SEP IRA does the same job with higher limits. None of these accounts photograph well. None of them will ever get you a compliment in a parking lot. That is structurally the entire appeal. I want to name one more force here because it's newer than Veblen and it explains a shift happening right now in how status actually works among people who already have money. It's sometimes called quiet luxury, and the core insight is this. Once you're wealthy enough that anyone worth impressing already knows it, the visible logo stops being useful and starts being a liability, a sign you're still trying. The truly wealthy increasingly signal to each other using cues that are invisible to everyone else. The weight and stitching of a coat with no logo at all. A watch that costs more specifically because it has no brand name on the face. A vacation nobody photographs. The uncomfortable insight underneath quiet luxury is that visible status symbols were always a middle rung, not a top one. A language spoken by people still climbing, largely ignored by people who've already arrived. Darius is fluent in a dialect that the people he's trying to impress stopped speaking years ago. One practical objection I should answer directly because sharp viewers will already be forming it. Doesn't all of this assume other people are constantly watching and judging your car and your clothes? Not exactly. And this is worth sitting with because it's the most freeing part of the whole video. Most of the time, they're not. A landmark set of psychology studies on what's called the spotlight effect found that people dramatically overestimate how much others notice and remember their appearance and choices. In the original experiments, subjects wearing an embarrassing shirt guessed nearly half the room would remember it. The real number was closer to 1 in 10. And most of those forgot within days. The parking lot isn't grading you. Nobody in it is taking attendance. The entire signaling economy runs on an audience that's mostly imaginary, checking their own phones, thinking about their own signal ratio, not yours. So here's the sharper version of the framework's first question, now that you have both the ratio and the studies behind it. Before any purchase past a basic threshold, ask not just signal or function, but specifically who exactly is the audience, and is that audience even watching? Half the time, when you actually name the person you're picturing judging your choice, you'll realize it's someone you haven't spoken to in years, or a stranger you'll never see twice. Naming the audience out loud tends to be more effective than any budgeting app ever built, because a budget fights a feeling with a spreadsheet. This fights a feeling with the truth about who's actually in the room.
Run your own number this week. 4 categories, 30 days, honest piles. Whatever the ratio comes back as, it isn't a verdict on your character. It's just data. And data is the one thing you can act on immediately. Move it 5 points this month. Move it 5 more next month. You don't need to hit Prius 6% by Friday. You need the number moving in one direction on purpose instead of drifting wherever the last advertisement pushed it. Darius will replace that lease in 3 years. Same payment, same treadmill. Priya will replace nothing because she already owns the only thing the treadmill was ever selling, the appearance of a life under control. Except hers isn't an appearance. Looking poor was never the strategy. Being unreadable was. And being unreadable, it turns out, is how you get rich in peace.